At the Texas A&M University at the Department of Soil and Crop Sciences. I welcome everyone to the first fire research workshop called Multiscale Effects of Extreme Forest Fires. This is an initiative of the Anillo ACT210060 project entitled Multiscale Effects of Extreme Forest Fires on Erosion, Water, and Biogeochemical Cycles in Natural and Managed Forest Soils. This project has collaborators nationally and internationally from different universities and institutes, and we're going to be looking at impacts of forest fires on soils in natives and managed plantation forests in Chile. On behalf of our team of researchers and collaborators, we thank you for your interest and participation in this workshop and the scientific dissemination of this field of research. We have a very interesting group of experts that are going to deliver very interesting presentations. We have presentations today, tomorrow, and on Thursday. So we'll invite you to keep attending to this. I think we're all gonna learn a lot from these presenters. We have presentations. Each presentation is about 20 minutes. I will ask presenters to try to keep their time. We have some flexibility today, a little bit more time maybe for the presentations, but I'll let you know when I will turn on my camera when you have 2 minutes left on your presentation. We are going to take all questions by the end of the workshop, by the end of this session. So you can use the chat to write down your questions, but you can also ask your questions directly at the end of the day. Our first presenter is Dr. Francisco Matus Baeza. He's an agronomist and PhD in agriculture and environmental sciences from the University of Wageningen. He is the director of the Laboratory of Conservation and Dynamics of Volcanic Soils at the Universidad de la Frontera. He's expert in carbon sequestration, soil fertility, and nutrient management, as well as in isotopic studies in plant soil systems. He is the director of the RING project that gathered us today here. So please help me welcome Dr. Francisco Matus. Dr. Matus, you have a total of 20 minutes for your presentation. It's okay if you use less time. So,
okay,
go ahead.
Thank you very much, Felipe. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning for some of you. I'm very happy to present our project. I think this is the frame project within this workshop is within the frame of this project that we won in 2021. Is a funded project from the government, Chilean government, who support this type of research for 3 or 4 years. I'm going to share the screen. Can you see my screen, Felipe?
Yes, so we can see it.
Let me, I cannot reduce this stuff here. Okay, sorry. Just a minute, please. I have some problems for okay. Now you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes, we can see it, but yes, now it's okay. Now we can see it.
Okay, sorry. This project is, as Felipe told us, is a multi-scale effect of extreme forest fires on the impact of erosion, water, and biogeochemical cycles in natural and managed forest soil. We have been participating in several universities. First of all, I would like to thank Felipe from Texas EM University and Universidad Concepción for organizing this meeting. Also Carolina Merino, together, those who were in charge of this organizing this nice workshop. We have different supporters, partner companies involved in the project, which are called Arauco, CMPC, and Astillero, who are happy to collaborate with us because they are forest companies involved in this area. So I want to present the investigators of collaborators in this project. First of all, my name is Francisco Matus from Universidad de la Frontera, Doctora Carolina Merino, who is a sub-director of this project, Ignacio Cofré, also from Universidad de la Frontera, and we have also Dr. Rafael Rubilar from Universidad Concepción, Felipe, who already you know, from Universidad Concepción and Texas EM, Alejandra Ester from Universidad Concepción, Claudia Rojas from O'Higgins University. We have a national collaborator, Cecilia Smith from Los Lagos University, Jose Dorner from Austral University. Also, we have international collaborators, Dr. Professor Jakub Kusiakov, Dr. Professor Michaela Dippold, and Dr. Professor Paulo Pereira from Lithuania. The first two are from Germany, one from Göttingen University, and the other, Michaela, is from Tübingen University. So as a background here, Chile has more than 2.5 million hectares of plantation pinus trees and eucalyptus, and more than 14.7 million hectares of native forest. Fire in this region, I'm going to show you a map later, is very important and affecting very huge area of the Mediterranean land in Chile, in the central part of Chile. For instance, in 2019 and 2020 season, it was 16% more fire hectares burned compared with the previous season. It's about 79,000 hectares were burned in 17-18 and 16% more in the last season, 2019 and 2020. So, and 2021, it was about 31,000 hectares burned, and it was in the last season 235% more than the previous season. You can see that this increase is affecting all this area and also worrying the authorities and policymakers because Chile is burning in the central part. You can see here a map, soil map, first of all, from latitude 35 to 37. Santiago is 700 kilometers away to the north, and the Mediterranean climate is from Santiago to almost the region that we are located in University, La Araucanía here. You can see this area is matching the most area of plantation, pine trees and eucalyptus plantation, but also match for the development of native forest in both cordilleras. You can see here the Andes Cordillera and also Coastal Cordillera, and most of these fragment pieces of land are with the pinus and also mixed with the forest. This is more or less in the Coastal Cordillera and more homogeneous vegetation, native vegetation in Andes Cordillera. Also, you can see very right hand here, the number of fires between 2002 and 2020, and you can see that the fire has been affecting all the territories here from latitude 35 to almost Puerto Montt, which is very south here. But the most fire are effectively affecting the Mediterranean and temperate, warm temperate climate here in the central part of Chile. So our hypothesis is that in the project is that the fire is very general one. The fire alter hydrological biogeochemistry functionality of the ecosystem, inducing soil erosions and nutrient losses, drastically reducing their productivity, making difficult ecosystem recovery. This is the collection of concern about the fire from the companies, also from the policymakers, and also from the scientists who were involved in this project. The objectives are three main objectives: the post-fire impact on the physical, chemical, and biological properties of soil and the notophagous species and Pinus radiata. This is the aim to study that cycling. And also we are going to simulate an artificial vegetation fire in a small plot with a stable isotope in order to see what is going with what is going on with the nutrient loss in those fires. The second objective is study the fire impact on soil restoration, nutrient restoration, and vegetation in a chronosequences. And the third one is the generate hydrological and productivity models associated with the recovery of soil nutrient and those in these ecosystems. The experimental design is very peculiar, is very particular. We are going to select the both Cordillera, Andes Cordillera, and Coastal Cordillera. The Andes Cordillera, most of the soil is kind of molly soils that we call Andes soils. Well, actually they are Andes soil, most of them. And the Coastal Cordillera should be alfisol and ultisol. In each one, we are going to select, as a first experiment, a native forest and plantation, and a micro catchment for monitoring micro catchment in those plantations which are burned and unburned. And we are going to technically put some sensors in order to collect the sediment and to collect the water fluxes in those micro catchments for at least 3 years. And we are going to use this system burn and burn from each of the catchment selected in both cordilleras. But in one of them, which is not burn catchment, we are going to make artificial fire, which is an experiment in order to see what is going on with the nutrients and vegetation after fire. It is a small plot fire, and we will show you here later in the picture how we are going to do so a little bit. So the third experiment is an chronosequences of fire age in different catchment, like a native and plantation. We are going to search for at least three ages from after fire, from 0 to 20 years, from native and plantation in each soil and cordillera. Those soils are starting already to sampling. We are going to see different properties, soil property, physical, biological, and chemical properties, and also vegetation recovery in each site. So this is more or less that we are going to do in an artificial fire. Is a plot about 4 meters by 3 meters. We are going to burn this plot. We are going to put some data logger, thermocouples, in order to, in different dips, in order to collect the temperature rise in those fires. but we are also to burn the material with label material, label vegetation with M15, C13, and also cesium, rubidium, and strontium. Those are presented here because cesium, rubidium, and strontium mimic the absorption of potassium and calcium, and nitrogen, well, you know that should be taken account in order to see what is going on with the mineralization and also the recovery of nutrient cycling, nitrogen cycling. Also, C13 going to tell us about the carbon, the aromatic carbon which remain, which called charcoal or black carbon in the soil. So this is the experiment that we are going to do in each plot, at least 4 burning experiment. And we need the permission for that. We need the support of company for that, because it's not allowed to burn in any time. We need a special time for burning and to do this experiment. What we have been done until this moment in the project has been hire 2 postdoc, Dr. Francisco Nájera and Efraín Duarte. Both have been working in a selecting site for microcatchment and also for chronosequences, fire chronosequences, together with Cecilia Smith, our collaborator from Universidad de los Lagos. We have been using classical technique, but effectively one. We have a base map of Chile, and we have been using Landsat image, satellite Landsat image, and we have been selecting with different indexes, like a normalized burn ratio, the NBR index, in order to see the severity of each fire in the region. We are going to select a different degree of severity. Most of them are important severity, fire severity in the Mediterranean area. And also we have also restrictions about the latitude, restriction like a slope, like aspect, and these sort of things. And each site that we are going to select for this study means 5 sites per year of burning, and different sites, about 5 sites per 5 years during the study. I mean, from 2021 to 2022. So, also we have been using a different technique, land strength technique, for to see exactly in one hot spot, let's say one region, a small region selected in the map. With this tool, we can see when the fire started and when the forest start to recovery, like here I show you. And also we know when exactly the fire started again, in the same place or in another place. This is the tool that we have been searching for in different areas, and also selecting the site. And we have been very successful in that. We have been already sampling more than 14 sites, and every site has been exactly as the model that we prepare here were predicted. So what we expect from the project, after all the collection, data collection after 3 years, extendable to 4 years, we have also the information from the companies, our partner, and relevant information like fertilization, irrigation management, soil conservation practices, nutrient restoration, and biological and physical restoration. All this information is gathering from the companies, also from our experiment. At the end, we are going to, we expect to modeling the result, an experimental result, and a modeling for productivity. There is some mistake there for productivity and soil erosion and soil nutrient cycling. Yeah, I don't want to go further with this presentation because this is the most important things that we are going to do in the project. And I would like to give a space to the presenters and speakers. Thank you very much, our speaker, for joining us in this workshop. And I would like to thank also the organizer, Universidad de la Frontera, as the government ANIT program for this nice project. So thank you very much for your attention, Felipe.
Thank you, Francisco. I would like to remind you that you can ask questions on the chat, or you can also like write them down now and ask them at the end. And as we're going to have a round of questions at the end that you can ask any of the presenters any question you want. So we have now Evgeny Avakumov. He's a PhD in ecology and soil sciences and Doctor of Primary Soil Sciences and Ecology, researcher and professor at the biology faculty at St. Petersburg State University, with expertise in soil sciences, soil ecology, humic substances, soil organic matter stabilization, polar environments, ecosystem services, and environmental management. I'd like to welcome Dr. Avakumov, and I would like to remind you have 20 minutes for your presentation, and I will turn on my camera when you have 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you very much for presentation of mine, and I would like to thank organizers of this conference, of this meeting, to give me opportunity to present our results of investigation of post-fire soils in various environments of Russia. And this presentation of mine and my co-author Ekaterina Chebykina, with a former surname Maximova, so you can remember her from various publications. Can you see my presentation and hear me?
Yes, we can see it well, but it's not in presenting mode. Maybe you want to like increase on the right side.
I don't know how to manage it here. But I will continue because we have not a lot of time. So sure. This work was supported by two projects. One of them is grant of president for young candidate of science, and leader of this grant is Ekaterina Chebykina. And the second is a large one for 7 years, is agri-technologies of the future, which is provided by Russian government. But of course, it is not devoted to only to the post-fire territories, but one of the key chapters of this project is also post-fire soils and fire lands management and so on. Of course, now we are busy in Russia as well as in the whole world with ecosystem services, and biota, terrestrial and water ecosystem plays very important role in providing of regulation services, carbon sequestration, carbon storaging, and I will not repeat these well-known facts which are emphasized in this picture. What I would to say, there's a key discussion point now in Russia because we have a so-called system of carbon polygons. Carbon polygons is a plots for verification of carbon units and carbon offsets. And these carbon polygons will be created in every region of Russia. But the question now is, if Russia is a carbon farm which provides a sequestration of carbon, or carbon anti-farm, especially with taking into account those facts that 2 last years we have extreme fire impact on tundra and forest tundra ecosystem of western and eastern Siberia, and soil respiration, especially artificial and fire soil respiration, play a very important role in this carbon balance and formation of so-called carbon anti-farms in Eurasian continent. If we see the dynamics of forest fires in Russia in last 2 decades, we can see that this dynamics is quite unhomogeneous from year to year, from decade to decade, but essential.
Dr. Abakuma, we cannot see your slides. Moving
You can
through.
see.
So now we can see the change.
Now you can see.
Before you were not passing them. Yeah.
I will see if this.
Полный экран. Полный экран, выведи, не видно.
I understand, but it doesn't work, Alexei. So if you see this dynamics of forest fire in Russia in the last decades, you can see that the dynamics is quite unhomogeneous, but many territories and many lands were covered by fires at one time or two times or three times. So I will present you few case studies which were conducted by my scientific group. They are spread within different biomes. First is taiga zone, tundra zone, forest tundra in central part of Yakutia, and forest steppe zone in Povolzhia region. So I will start from the case study of tundra region. Tundra is now very intensively faced to wildfires, and even such places like permafrost affected regions, for example, Yamal region, which is located in cryolitha zone. And here we have investigated podzols of forest tundra and measured carbon, nitrogen content, C/N ratio, carbon stocks, and so on. And here in this picture, you can see normal distribution of, for example, carbon and nitrogen in blue-colored mature soil or control podzol, and extremely high accumulation of carbon and nitrogen in folic horizon or topsoil superficial organic horizon. This is not real accumulation of carbon, you know, but in all post-fire ecosystem, we have so-called apparent accumulation in first 2 or 3 years of black carbon or pyrogenic carbon. And also we have measured the content and composition of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in folic horizons of tundra ecosystem. And you can see that due to pyrogenic factors, there is an accumulation of benzopyrene in topsoil, which is known as cancerogenic organic component, and essential increment of some of the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in folic horizons of tundra soils. So this is a quite interesting topic because this question is really underestimated in zonal scale in case of fire effect on soils of tundra, forest tundra, and boreal forest and forest steppe ecosystem. Another example of post-fire soils which we have investigated in our work is a forest tundra ecosystem in central Yakutia. This study was conducted in 2021, and you can see an example of soil profiles of so-called pale soils. Pale soils is soils with a pale color, yellowish one, in specific loess type, loess-like parent materials in central Yakutia. And here we have investigated classical routine chemical properties and also fixed increment of total organic carbon and some alkalinization of the fine earth, which is normal for pyrogenic environments. And also in this case, we have measured electric resistivity with the aim to analyze the depth of permafrost table and active layer. And the main result of this case study is that 1 year fire doesn't affect the active layer and permafrost table, but the future task is to continue year from year measuring of electric resistivity on this plot and to fix if there is some dynamics of active layer under effect of 1 year or 2 year or 3 year fires. I don't know why, but there is some accumulation of heavy metals. There is not typical for another plots which we have investigated after fires. Another case study which we visited this year, this summer, is the Novgorod region, which is located close to Leningrad region, here between Moscow and St. Petersburg. And here we use it so-called Catena approach, with aim to understand spatial distribution and redistribution of carbon and pollutants and nutrients within the relief of glacial genesis with the soils of podzol type. This very preliminary study and results of this study are presented on this picture. And here we investigated in details contents of nutrients, and there is some dynamics and redistribution within the slope in comparison with the control plot. And this is also very interesting topic for the future research. And the last case study, which is now about 12 years old, is a forest steppe plots which are located close to Samara and Tolyatti regions. And here in steppe, we have an interchange between steppe areas located in clay texture parent materials and so-called islands of forest. In Russia is Ostrovные Bары. And these forests are located on a sandy textured parent materials. And in 2010, many of them in Samara region, in Orenburg region, and in Ukraine, in Dnepropetrovsk region, for example, in Kharkov region, were affected by intensive fires due to a very dry and extremely hot summer. And here we have a 12 years old monitoring plots, and every year we used to visit these plots to understand the dynamic of plant cover, vegetation cover, soil morphology, forest management practices implemented by local government as well, and so on. And I will come to last pictures because this presentation is too large for our time schedule. And we used to investigate morphological dynamics, even mesomorphological and micromorphological dynamics of this parasperogenic soil every year during 12 years. Dynamics of content of organic carbon and composition of organic matter. And this picture is particularly interesting for us because here is presented NMR spectra of humic substances formed in control soils, which is colored by red, and in post-fire soils. What we can see here, increment, essentially increasing of aromatic part in post-fire soils. This is not real increasing of humification degree. This apparent accumulation of aromatic compounds due to decreasing of peripheral aliphatical parts, which are more easy to be burned and affected pyrogenically. Another spectroscopical methods, which is very interesting in informatics for humic substances, is electron spin resonance. And we can see that in control plot, the concentration of free radicals is essentially lower than in soils affected by fires. So this indicates some disorganization of free radicals in molecules of humic substances under the effect of a fire. Also, we used to measure basal respiration and microbial biomass, but I will not discuss in details. Very interesting is a particle size distribution or polydispersity of soils, which are obtained by classical sedimentation and laser diffractometry methods. So different methods, as in normal soils, provides different results and different conclusions. But the nature of particles in burned soils is different than in Chernozems, for example, or in natural podzols. And this is also very interesting and key task of a future investigation. I will skip our results of modeling and so on. And I will go to conclusion. The problem of post-fire soils investigation, of course, other people from Russia will contribute, of course, from their region, some knowledges and new ideas. But the key problem from my point of view is that our investigation are too clustered, too localized, and Russia is not covered enough by monitoring of post-fire environments. And the second question, that every Russian group use their own methodology and their own methods to investigate post-fire plots. And that is why it is not easy to compare data derived from different groups and obtain it in different cities of our large country. Thank you for your attention, and I apologize for these technical problems with my presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abakumov. I remind everyone that you can use the chat. I see that some people are already using it, but if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat. We'll pick them later at the end of the presentations, and we're gonna ask them to the different presenters. Make sure you write down who are you asking when you write in the chat, so it's easier for us later. So the next presentation is from Dr. Paulo Pereira. He is full professor and researcher at the Mykolas Romeris University in Lithuania. He is the head of the Environmental Management Laboratory and director of the Master Program in Environmental Governance. I welcome Paulo. Are you there? Dr. Pereira?
I am.
Okay.
Yes, Felipe, I'm here. Wait only a
Yes.
bit to share my presentation.
Yes, please.
Okay, can you see my presentation?
It's coming. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for the invitation on this workshop, and catching a bit the words of Evgeny, that he spoke a bit about ecosystem services. I don't know that if in Russia they studied effects of fire on ecosystem services, but there are many or some studies already done it, not much, but I think it's a field that we fire researchers need to explore somehow. And in the last years, I come interested on these topics, not only on the question of the soils, but also in the ecosystem services in general. So the title of the presentation is mainly, I put it wildfire, but it could be fire because I will speak a bit also about prescribed fires and all this both types of fire will affect the ecosystem services. So for several years, we have been a battle, even among research, to show that fire is a natural component of the ecosystems, and they shape the ecosystems from different parts of the world. And most of the biomes are adapted to their visit, although this visit can be more different. They are adapted to this. So this is important to understand that we are dealing with the natural component, and we have to adapt to how to live with it. Another important thing is that a key aspect to how we live it on Earth today. So there is a existence of man after the fire, and before manage the fire, and after manage the fire. So this is a factor of development and essential for our existence on Earth until nowadays. The third aspect is what the image that the fire has. So fire has normally a bad image to most of the stakeholders, public opinion, that I think we as researchers that many battles to show that we have to live with it and we have to manage and somehow know how to mitigate their effects, because we all know that it's impossible to extinguish fire existence. So somehow we have to minimize their effects in a certain way. So this is the map of today of fire that was around the world, and it's extremely interesting that most of the areas affected are in Brazil, in Amazon, in Africa, that most of the times we don't have news from this, at least in Europe. So the wildfires are a big problem, perhaps in Australia, in the Mediterranean Europe, in the United States, but the information about the fires or where they are occur is very limited. And we can see this better in this image. So the concentration of fires around the world, this is in 2018, to give an example, is especially in Africa and in Brazil. And in Europe and in America, the density is much lower. So I think that is important to know, especially what's happened impacts of fire in Africa, because it's the area where the density is high. This is from a research point of view. So another important thing is that to understand how is the factors that affect the fire. So I like to resume this a bit because they are a complex factor. That's why it's my point of view is interesting when we integrate climate change, the persistence of rocks and their length that increase the probability of fire or the vulnerability of the ecosystems. But there are other factors that perhaps are equal or in some cases more important than the climate per se. So we also, another important thing is that how the land is being abandoned, not only in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. And this means that there is more fuel and more biomass to be burned. So if there is a good climate conditions for fire development and a lot of biomass, of course the fire will be more probable. To this, we have the sum also the impacts of the arsons or the criminal hand that nowadays is perhaps most of 90% of the fires that are occurring is mostly to criminal hand. So this is also an important to know, is an important fact to trigger the fire. Other important aspect is the expansion of new residences in a nearby cities, the so-called wildland interface, wildland forest interface, where people that live in these new places, they don't know or they are not adapted to live in these regions. So for negligence, they can increase also the fire risk or the fire occurrence. Another thing that is for several years has been shown as a paradox is that much more we protected the fires or much more invest in suppression, we increase the high risk of highly severity fires, because if we don't manage these places and protect it without some kind of initiatives to reduce the biomass, of course, you will have more fires. So protect at all the costs maybe is not the most clever thing to reduce the fires. And finally, how we manage the areas, the burned areas that normally you use this heavy machinery to take the trees and to remove the logs and so on. And this, in many cases, these activities have much more impact than the fire itself. So what we produce from this, of course, that you have a planet that burns, and we develop a well-known phenomena that is land degradation. Okay, so the fact of the fire exists perhaps might be not a problem in a way, but in another way, if you intervene in the burned areas, this might increase even more the problem than the fire itself. So another important aspect to understand the impacts of ecosystem services is that the number of fires, this is an example from the US, the number of fires is decreasing, but the severity or the area affected is increasing. So this means that the fires are becoming more virulent, and the fires of big proportions, although they are reduced, they can affect more area. And these are the fires that normally we do not want. The fires that are affected small areas and they have low severity, this perhaps they are good for the ecosystems. But you have an ongoing cycle of high severity fires. Likely you have a cascade of degradation of the ecosystems. So this is what we are living now. Perhaps most of you know about these mega fires or high severity fires. That is the ones that we are living today. So the problem perhaps not anymore the number of fires, but the characteristics of these fires itself. So this is some images that are normal in the social, in the TV, of these high impact, high severity fires. in several parts of the world, and so on. So how we can understand this from ecosystems person's point of view? First of all, it's important to understand what is the concept of ecosystem services, and this is just like the benefits that nature provide to humans. And there are different classifications about their impact, about the different ecosystem services, but normally they are divided in regulating, provisioning, and cultural. So fire has different impacts on this aspect, on these three different divisions, depending on the type of fire and so on. So another thing that is important to understand the impact of fire ecosystem services is that habitat change and climate change, these one two are the major drivers of fire existence. So mainly they will affect all the ecosystems per se, with the exception of marine and freshwater indirectly, of course, and these have impacts on the ecosystem services and all the ones that I mentioned previously. Okay, so but as I told you in the beginning, there is two types of fires. That one friendly fire that we call prescribed fire or permitted fire, used for management, and the other ones that wildland fires. So prescribed fires, they normally they can increase the nutrients, they can increase the biodiversity, they can use for landscape management, so the landscape can have a higher aesthetic, and they have normally short in time, and positive impacts on the ecosystems, and they have a good measure to manage the forest. If you don't manage the forest or do not consider the prescribed fires, normally what happens is that we have this high severity fires that we don't want, that induce degradation, induce erosion, utilization of nutrients, and basically for a window, a certain time until the ecosystem starts to recover, a degradation of the vegetation. Okay, so this vegetation recuperation after the fire depends on many factors that are not here to discussion, but for a certain time, the landscape will need some kind of time to recover, and especially to not be touched by humans. Okay, so from a point of view of the ecosystem services, this was a paper that was published last year, when you made some kind of impacts of the wildfire and prescribed fire and ecosystem services. If you are familiar with the different classifications or different types of service, it will be easy to understand. So both fires, both prescribed and wildfire fires, they have some kind of limitations on climate regulation, because the destruction of the forest will decrease, you have impacts on the microclimate, on the climate of a region. And of course, this will have impacts on air quality or air quality, because this will increase the greenhouse gases. Although the wildfire have also more impact, always more impact than the prescribed fire. Another important aspect is that in the wildfires, because of the removal of vegetation, because of the increasing of the bare soil, because of the erosion and the water and the overland flow, there is an increase of loss of nutrients, and of course, if the fire has a very big impact, the area do not have the capacity to reduce the floods or decrease the landslides. So the capacity of this ecosystem to reduce the natural hazards is at least for a certain time that is lost. Another important aspect is how the prescribed fires have impacts. They can have impacts depending on the location, depends on the severity. They can have impacts at least minimal in the water pollution, in the erosion, but always less than the previous one. And of course, finally, for the pollination, this impacts in the case of the wildfire can be, the studies that we consulted, some one tell was negative because of the total destruction of the vegetation, but some were positive because they create a new ecosystem or new grasslands or new grasses that is good for pollinators. And if we go, what is the impact of the prescribed fires on natural hazard regulation and in the pollination? The literature said they are positive. First of all, because the prescribed fire is used to reduce the event of a wildfire. So it's reduce the natural, increase the natural hazards protection. And the pollination, because normally, as I will show you later, the grasses are restored very fast. So for the pollinators, it's very good. And finally, surprisingly, especially in the case of the wildfires, the pest and diseases control is good, because even after the wildfire, if the forest is sick, the fire can regenerate it very, very, very fast. Okay, so this is a case of in Croatia about the forest that burn it at a high severity, and after the rainfall, we'll expect that perhaps the small soil or this kind of terra rossa that is in between the calcareous rocks will be eroded, of course, because there is no protection in this case of fire. This is also an evidence of this white ashes and this soil that is with the reddish soil, that the fire was very hard. And this if there is meteorological conditions for increase the degradation, this will be happens, the degradation in this area. This is also areas in Portugal where you can see that the fire was very high severity, and the same thing here. So these areas, although as Francisco mentioned with their studies in remote sensing, if you go to the field, this is an evidence of a very high burden severity. Okay, if you pass to the facts or to the impact on the ecosystem services of the provisioning, well, basically wildfire is bad for everything, because they can destroy the crops. They destroy the capacity of the area to produce biomass of energy or timber. They also feel that fires can kill livestock, and they destroy for some time the wild foods and resources. And because of the materials transported to the water bodies, there is a degradation of the biocenosis and zoocenosis of the area. So wildfires are catastrophic for provisioning services. On the other hand, the prescribed fires can have some benefits. Okay, so they can induce some kind of natural fertilizers with the ash for the crops. They can increase the pastures for the livestock, and if carried with the low severity, they can also perhaps promote the germination of plants that can provide food. Okay. However, prescribed fires can have also negative aspects on the timber, on the biomass. So if there is a prescribed fire, of course, there is a reduction of the biomass, because most of the objectives are related with this. And in the second case, that there are studies that show that the value of a timber is reduced after the prescribed fire. That's why several stakeholders are very resistant to apply prescribed fires on their forest. And finally, the prescribed fires on the fish and food that are especially in the riparian and the lacustrine areas depends very much on how much erosion will be, and this is the studies show different things. Okay, so here it is how prescribed fire was applied for landscape restoration in South Africa. Was done by the park authorities, and this is a case in Lithuania that after 2 months after the fire, after the spring fire, that the landscape was out like this. There's nothing happened. So basically, the recuperation of the ecosystem to a certain disturbance is very different according to different biomes. And these spring fires here, at least in these latitudes, are not a problem at all. Even they are good for these grasses to grow and input some nutrients from the soil temporarily. And finally, if you look to the cultural ecosystem services, we can see that fires are very bad for recreation and for landscape aesthetics and cultural heritage because they represent the destruction of a patrimony. Okay, but in some case, prescribed fires can be positive to clean the landscape or to arrange the better landscape for the tourist, but the effect of the smoke has also revealed to be not the best for the tourists. And finally, prescribed fires have a good impact on the landscape aesthetics because they create or clean the landscape to be easier for people to walk and to enjoy, and they can also restore social landscapes. For example, the fire was used by many cultures as the restoration of cultural landscapes. Okay, so this is also something to consider. And finally, I think that the fire and both wildfires and fire are very positive for the knowledge systems, because I think this is one of the reasons that we are in this talk or in this workshop, to understand a bit more about fires and the impact on ecosystems, and how the prescribed fires also can have the same way. Okay, so this was something important that I can share with you. What is the impact on the tourists, how the tourists were evacuated. This is some examples in some holidays regions in Australia and in Greece. Another thing is that how wildland fires, they can destroy the patrimony, the archaeological sites, but this is, I saw in another publication that is some kind of double edge, because in some ways they can destroy, but the fact that can occur a fire can also discover some heritage, some archaeological sites. So this is some kind of discussable. And finally, well, this is about research, where you have to do research, when you need to do our meetings and so on, and engage with other research and the knowledge about fire. And this last slide is because among the science and among stakeholders, there is some kind of green trend that have to be very worrying for us as fire scientists, because they are promoting the plantation of trees and the start restoration of the landscapes with more and more trees, and this might represent a very big danger for the development of fires. And of course, need to be more careful about this, how we restore the landscapes. So to conclude my presentation with some final notes, I think that you learn to live with the fires. They cannot be erased. Prescribed fires bring more benefits for the ecosystem services, and wildfires are more detrimental, but this is normal because they are more destructive, but the post-fire conditions are very important on this impact. And finally, is the key to prevent high severity fire recurrence and avoid ecosystems degradation. So thank you very much. I think I spoke a lot more than the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Paulo. You were like just barely a little bit high. That's fine.
Thank you, Felipe.
We still have plenty of time for questions. So I'll invite people who has anyone that have questions you can raise your hand and we'll give you the mic so you can ask your question directly. Or if you prefer, you can also write it down on the chat and we'll read it. So I will invite also the speakers to turn on your cameras if you can. So we're gonna, so Francisco, so we can start with the questions. So there's one question in the chat. So it says, Evgeny, how do you think, in what way carbon polygons could be used to study fire effects on soils? Dr. Abakum, that's for you.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Ekaterina. Ekaterina, thank you for your nice question. I would say, serious question for current state of creation of methodology of carbon polygons in Russia, because every region is responsible for carbon polygons, and they are spread not homogeneously in Russia. Some of them in forest zone, some of them in steep zone, some of them in mountain landscapes. But carbon polygon is not only one plot. There is some kind of system of plots. And what I mean that this system of plots in every region should incorporate one fire affected plot. For example, here in Leningrad region, we have a so-called polygon Ladoga, which I have visited today for last time because of winter starting here. But Ladoga is located in the South Taiga forest in mature ecosystem and presented by drainage at automorphous landscape with pine stand and peatland. But we will also include some urbanized area, because urbanized area is very important in terms of evaluation of carbon dioxide dynamics. We will also include some water ecosystem. I mean, some part of Gulf of Finland, but I don't know how it will be managed because I'm terrestrial ecologist. And of course, we will include in this carbon polygon system some monitoring plot in arable field. We have not here something like a Rotomstedt station, of course, but we have some monitoring plots of Agrophysical Institute. And my idea is that we will include some post-fire plots in Nizhny Svirsky State Reserve with well-known and documented history of fires for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abakumov. Is anyone has any question that want to ask? Maybe you want to ask it directly. You can turn on your camera, your mic. Claudia.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I do have like an open question for Paulo, I guess. I would like to hear your opinion on whenever we describe or classify the effect of fires on the ecosystem, we kind of classify them on extreme wildfires to less severity in the wildfire itself. But I wonder if you are considering the aridity that is projected, for example, in Mediterranean ecosystems, where the immediate impact of, say, extreme wildfires, this restoration process could be affected not only by the fire itself, but the conditions in the future for that ecosystem restoration processes. So I wonder, what is your opinion on that?
Okay, so arid climates, at least to my knowledge, they are more difficult to recover to fire than wet climates, because the water is a key aspect to help the vegetation to be restored. Okay, so this is a key thing. But there is another thing: if there is more aridity, there is less biomass, and there is at the same time less, the severity is lower. Okay, so these two facts that you have to play. So at least when you are studying the effects of the fire, one key aspect is the severity, because after the severity, we know that if the fire is high severity, especially in arid ecosystems, it will be more problematic to recover. The vegetation will take more time because of the lack of water. In another case, if you go to the forecast of in the Mediterranean areas, because the drought periods will be high, okay, so this means that the restoration will be more difficult in a way. And there is another layer added to this that I do not speak, but is also important, is that the fire recurrence. Okay, so if the fire recurrence is too short, and that has high severity, there is a dramatic increase of the degradation of the ecosystems. So another thing that is important as well on this process of degradation, of course, is topography, but is especially the post-fire rainfall and the precipitation and so on. So there are several aspects, but to me, the aridity is some kind of key aspect that delays the vegetation recovery. Also, how the soil is affected and so on, but it's more complex things that are site specific. Okay, because there are soils that more vulnerable than in others. So this is it has to be more site context.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Paulo.
Okay.
Jorge.
Hi. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Hi, Paulo, and hi, everyone. Yeah, it's only regarding the question of Claudia. One of the things that I think is interesting to take into account is that in terms of restoration, we have to take a lot of care of the soil, but we can. I think we have to think that the climate is changing, so we cannot expect to have the same forest in 20 or 30 years that we have now. And this is, I think, something interesting that we have to take into account, because especially in Mediterranean, we will have less rain, so the forest will be different. So this is, I think, something that we have to think about from now, because in terms of restoration of vegetation, yeah, we cannot have the same biomass, and maybe it's in some cases the same species. It's something to take into account, something to reflect. And see you tomorrow, because my talk will be tomorrow.
I agree with Jorge.
Thank you, Jorge.
I think there is another question on the chat.
Yes, I can ask it to Paulo. There is an intensity or severity for prescribed fire that has to be reached or controlled to ensure a positive effect. And if that is correct, which techniques could be used to reach it and not surpass it? Okay, so the firefighters that are experienced to do these prescribed fires, when they go to do it, they ask it to the owner, what is the objective of this prescribed fire? And according to this objective, they can make the fire with more severity or with less severity. Because in several cases, some of the to not make the fire so high severity, they remove biomass. So a prescribed fire, since it's something that is more controlled, there is some specific objectives, and we follow these objectives to the fire. So if you want to have a low severity fire, or that don't have too much damage on the soil, it's important that the biomass do not be so high, or so high number of biomass. So these positive effects that the prescribed fire has is when they have low severity, and one of the indications of this low severity is that these surface fires that run some of them run fast if it's in a grassland, but others in forest that then run more slow, is when you have a layer of black ash. And you can see that, okay, so this fire did not push it very hard in this area. And like this, we expect that from the ash have a more good or more available nutrients. Okay, so this will produce a good impact, because the impact on the soils are minimal, or maybe absent. It will be only indirect as consequence of the ash, not of the temperatures. Thank you, Paulo. I have kind of a follow-up question, unless someone else want to ask a question now. So well, actually, when we see in the literature, most of the effects of fire are studied in place, in situ, right? Like the effects on soils in place. And there's a lot of literature coming out, right? Like looking at the off-site effects. And this has been done for a long time, especially in water systems. But I feel like the way we're dealing with fire within properties and not looking at the whole aspect. For example, when I was living in Concepcion during the summer, we have the wildfires, and like that really kind of shut down the city when you have fires around, because you cannot breathe, you know, like the pollution is huge. And Dr. Abakum was like mentioning, you know, like some of these toxic, maybe cancerogenic substances that are released. The salt that is released, and then it you know, pollute waterways or other places. So I feel like there is a kind of a big gap in terms of the way the off-site effects of fires are studied, and you know, like their actual long-term effects of wildfires, especially more like than the prescribed fires, but the wildfires that, you know, come and go, and like the recurrence can be very frequent. As I remember when I was living in Concepcion, that was pretty much every summer, you know, we have a fire event that produced large fumes and polluted the city. So I don't know what any thoughts. This is a kind of an open comment, really.
Well, there are many studies. There are many studies about the off-site effects of wildfires on the landslides, on flash floods, on water quality, even in the drinkable water, that this remains for some time. You know, at least in the middle period, there is an impact that then with the time will disappear, meanwhile, when the vegetation recovers. But there are many studies, and mainly is that the effects on the water are a mirror of what the effects on the soil, because we have effects on the soil, increase of some nutrients, or increase sometimes some metals, and all this is transported to the water. So in terms of hydrology, there are very, very good studies already about this, of the side effects. Yeah.
Francisco, thank you, Paulo.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Paulo. But I have a question for Abutum. Is it not here, Doctor?
Yes, he is.
Yes, okay.
Jenny,
Yes, go ahead. Okay. I was wondering how you explain the accumulation of heavy metals after fire.
Mm-hmm.
I can give a hint on this.
This is a good question, because this accumulation rate seems to be affected of initial content in plant materials, of heavy metals in plant materials, and the intensity of fire and temperature, because, you know, these heavy metals is a part of ash, and we need to conduct more experiments in many zones, in many environments. You know, for example, tundra in Yakutia is very dry environment with no leaching and no, how to say, gravimetric penetration of water within the soil, because these are dry valleys. But if one go to the Western Siberia, there is over moisted, leached, acid environments, completely different from each other. So one is alkaline and the second is acid. Okay. The same we can say to different types of forests. Forests in Eastern Siberia and Western Siberia and so on in the European part. And another comment is how to evaluate threshold concentration of toxics in Russia and in other countries. You know, these threshold concentration are quite different. Here, for example, for benzopyrene, we have 20 nanograms per gram, while in Germany, they have 4 levels for different functional zones. And in some cases, these values, which are allowed in Germany, in 10s or 20 times higher than in Russia. But in European countries, these threshold concentrations are realistic. here in Russia, they are very severe and strong because we have this model of regulation, which is based on arable fields. So we suggest that all the soils will be used for croplands and so on. And the last point that, as I know, in Chile, people have completely different threshold concentration and approaches for their, how to say, formulation. So what is toxic and how many is dirty? There is a question for different countries and different regions of one country, like Russia.
Yeah, normally we follow the US rules for concentration in heavy metals. Yes.
But for heavy metals is more easy because here we use not only threshold concentration, but index of geoaccumulation, which is also arise from German science, as I understand, and also pollution index and so on, these logarithmic indexes. But as for organic contaminants, it's completely different approaches.
Thank you.
Paulo?
Okay. Can I speak?
Yes.
Regarding the heavy
yes.
metals, regarding the heavy metals, the metals after in the ash, Evgeny, they are very, very rich because they volatilize at very high temperatures. Okay, so they remain in the ash, and once they have more available, or I mean, they stay in the in the ash, and if the pH is lower, then they are released, but they can stay on the mass. So the question of the heavy metals after the fire is one of the trade-offs, that if they come to a pH that they can be available, they can increase temporarily some kind of contamination, but this is have to pass some time and is not always. Okay.
Thank you.
Two more questions. One says, how will low intensity per scrap fires affect the composition of organic matter and carbon pools?
Hi, Alexei. Look, I'm not a very big expert on carbon. Okay, I understand a bit about carbon on soils and temperature, how this changes, because, for example, with the temperature, the carbon will be degraded and pass from the charcoal or the black carbon to carbonates. Okay, so what's happened if the fire is of low severity? The question is that the carbon will, if not eroded, will accumulate on soil, and will be a nutrient source for the plants. Okay, so normally the studies say that if the fire have a low severity, there is an increase of carbon on soils because of this carpal implication, carpal incorporation in the matrices. Of course, there is decrease in the wildland fires because the temperatures of utilization were much high, so the carbon just disappeared because of the high temperatures. But normally, and I think Jorge here, I think he agree with me that is an increase on the carbon pools. There are changes on the carbon characteristics, but there are an increase because there is an input. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Alexei.
Okay. For tomorrow. Okay.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, so there is another question because of.
There's another question. It says, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned severity and resilience. Can you specify those concepts and indicate perhaps according to your experience, what is the relationship with intensity and severity? Thank you. This question was by Carla Eras.
The severity is a measure that we use to apply to see the event, the effects of fire. It's not a direct measurement, but what is the effects of fire, because you are not able to measure the effects of the temperatures during a wildfire. So we go there, we go to the field, and we see according to the branches, to the ashes and other metrics, we see how much intense is the fire. And the value of the fire severity that can be different according to different ecosystems, according to the composition of the trees, including of the topography. So this is the real measurements, how the ecosystem was affected by by the wildfire. Okay, so there is a difference between intensity. Intensity is the energy released during the combustion, okay, and there is the severity that is a post-fire measurement that we see on the burned areas. So this is a measure or somehow of I'll say a proxy how to measure how damaged was the fire, because you do not have instrumentation to measure measure the temperature during the fire. The question of the resilience, well, the resilience is a concept that is the capacity of the ecosystem to sustain an impact until have a threshold. So is how much the ecosystem has the capacity to absorb the impact of the fire. So Mediterranean ecosystems, most of them, they are adapted to this. But the question is that with the climate change, with the increasing of aridity, of changing of the forest, as the change of the vegetation, as Jorge said, and with the fire recurrence, how these ecosystems will change their resilience. So in this case, the resilience will be lower because the ecosystem changes as well. So here, for example, at high severity fire, the ecosystems have a lower resilience because the impact is much higher. Okay, so just to make some kind of link what you told. I think I hope I answered to your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Paulo. And Jorge says, Paulo, I can share a slide on fire intensity and severity difference. I don't know if you want to share it now.
I think you did great, Jorge.
If you want, I can share because I have in my presentation for tomorrow. But if you want, I can share this slide for the question. Do you want that I can share my slide? Or?
Please go ahead.
Can you share? Can you see my?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. In this slide, you can see that the fire intensity describes the physical combustion process. So this is the energy released from organic matter, and the fire severity is the degree of environmental change caused by the fire. That can be different. It's not necessarily, not always is correlated, because if the fire intensity is, if the fire is spread from the crown of the trees, maybe the fire severity with the soil is not too very high. But there are two different concepts. Yeah. So okay, I'm going.
And there is another thing that's important, as Jorge said. The ground fires are different from the fire that goes on the soil, because you can see all the grounds destroyed, but the impacts on the soil might be minimal. And can cause the opposite. For example, pit fires. Pit fires, there is no tree burning, and the impacts are devastating.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you. I think we are on time, and I don't want to take more time of all the presenters and people attending. Really appreciate this lively discussion, and we'll meet tomorrow again at the same time. We'll have more presentations. Really thank you everyone for coming and joining us today, and hope to see everyone tomorrow again.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Francisco.
Bye.
Bye-bye.